Hello, everybody. Welcome to World Edition. I am not your host. I'm Nick Palavita, and I'm going to be with you today because our two hosts are, who knows where they're at. But because our hosts aren't here, we're going to bring in our panel right away and get down to what the issues are around the world and, of course, the United States of America and all the other places that you listen to us. And then maybe Steve and Mark will drop in. And first of all, let's bring in our famous former Associate Dean of the University of South Dakota School of Law, the Professor Dan Worthington. Dan, welcome to the World Edition. Of course, you've been on here before, but no one knows what you actually do. But that's another story.
Welcome to the great city of Cedar Hills, Utah, a hamlet alongside the beautiful Wasatch Front Mountains.
Yeah, it's like everybody knows where it is. It's like Steve always goes, "Oh, from Morrisville, North Carolina." Well, no one knows where Morrisville, North Carolina is. Hello. Most people don't know where Raleigh is. I'm serious. I've already done studies on it, and empirical studies. Okay. And barely anyone knows where Raleigh is, and they barely know where North Carolina is.
I'm just on the other side of the mountain from Salt Lake City.
You're on the other side of the mountain. Okay. So you're in the Salt Lake City area. People kind of know where Salt Lake City is.
Yeah, I kind of know it. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll bring our other panelist on who's made it up this morning is Lee Newton Rhodes. Lee, welcome to the World Edition.
Hey, Lee.
We just want to do a mic check. Can we hear you? No, we can't hear you.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can. Well, now I can hear you. Okay, so
okay.
That's all good. So
Small detail.
We're working again, and just to let you know, we're beaming on Amazon Fire, Roku, and PodTV.tv around the world. And I always check because PodTV.tv, you can listen to anywhere, the show anywhere, and all of our live shows stream on PodTV.tv. Roku, even though it's a big name in the United States, as you go international, where's Roku? They only have like 60 million people. Vimeo, which we're broadcasting on, has 280 million. And Amazon Fire about 50 million. So they're kind of like what I call emerging technologies in terms of beaming. Anyway, we're beaming around the world. So it's good to have all the people from around the world who are listening to our show, wanting to know what's going on in the United States of America, which we all live in. And right now, the big news in the United States of America is what? I'll defer to Lee Newton Rhodes. What's the big news that we have here in the great USA?
Censorship of media by big tech. There's last week a number of videos dropped. One obviously was Memphis. One was Paul Pelosi, but there was another one, Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, undercover video of a Pfizer executive talking about vaccines and mutating viruses, which got over 20 million hits before YouTube took it down.
Right. Well, the thing is, this is not unusual. Every morning I have meetings with my executive team about what we've been banned on for the day. Okay. Facebook and Google have basically pushed us off for various different reasons. So it's not unusual, but it's not just media.
But it should be unusual in America. It should be very unusual.
I know, but it isn't. It isn't. This is America, the land of censorship. But here's another problem I see, Lee, and this is between us three people speaking here. One of the big news right now is Memphis, the police officers who did a bad thing and they beat this person up and they killed him. Okay. But here's what's not reported. 300 people died. 300 people died in Memphis who were murdered in Memphis. I guess their lives don't matter, does it? The media doesn't pick it up. In other words, we'll bring in Mark Lee now. Aha, finally we got a sponsorship. But the thing is, Lee, here's my problem. All right. Why doesn't the media report the 300 murders in Memphis? And why aren't people marching in the streets demanding justice for the 300 people who got killed this year in Memphis? Instead, the media jumps to the police. Okay.
That's a rhetorical question.
Is it not? Other people, their lives don't matter?
No, they don't. They don't.
They don't matter. Okay.
They don't matter. Why? Because there's nothing to be gained by reporting on them. There's no agenda to be achieved. There's no legislation that we could pass. There's nothing. There's no crisis that we could solve by bringing it up.
But believe it or not, here's the reason for the Scorpion team, the team that beat the guy up, that killed the guy. All right. The reason for that team was actually they were a terrorist unit, so to speak, from Memphis to reduce the crime rate of
Okay.
the 300 people that got killed in Memphis every year. Okay, so it's almost like they have a poison in Memphis, which is not being reported, and people are not protesting on the streets. The 300 people that got killed, and they got murdered in Memphis. Their lives don't matter, according to the media.
Sounds like a
I
song.
want to hear from Dan. What do you think about that? In other words, the 300 people that died in Memphis this year being murdered, and their lives don't matter.
Well, their lives do matter, Nick, as all life matters. The problem is they don't create a narrative for the press. They don't create a narrative for the cause and the banners. And so they don't make good TV, right? It's interesting that this case of this fellow that was stopped in a some sort of traffic violation. I don't even know the whole thing that happened. He was unlucky enough to get stung by the Scorpion Squad.
They got stung by the Scorpion Squad. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they were involved in, unless it was some sort of drug-related thing. I don't know why.
It was a regulated terrorist group in Memphis designed to
Nick,
stop crime.
Nick, one thing that needs to be said, I in no way justify or condone what the police did. From what I know, it's horrible. Period. End of stop.
I agree.
But
I don't know why they did.
one second, I don't know. 1 second, but there's nothing ever to be gained by resisting arrest from the police. Period.
No.
I don't get it.
Don't grab for a cop's gun. You're going to get killed.
Yeah,
It doesn't justify what the police did.
No,
but-
it doesn't justify. But I agree with you. There was a resisting arrest. But here's the problem I see, Lee, with this whole reporting and we want justice. We want justice. What about the 300 other people who died this year in Memphis being murdered on the streets? There's no justice for them. I mean, why is the media ignoring them? Like their lives are not important. And the thing is, this is the real problem. The minute the police does it, all of a sudden, oh, your life's important, and people run out in the streets in the protests. Okay, but let's say the police didn't do it, because like even in our neighborhood where I live, purportedly safe, since I moved here 3 years ago, there have been 2 murders, and there's been no protest, no nothing. And what it was kind of interesting. Spouses got mad at their husbands and they blew them away. I mean, it was just like poof. One was right down the street from me, and one was in the Barnes and Noble in the common area. But there was no outrage. There was no let's go to the streets and protest. Let's demand justice for the person who got killed. Nothing. In other words, it wasn't even a sentence. It was just who cares? They died. Somebody got killed. It's life.
Hey, Nick.
Mark,
Nick,
those
a couple
lives don't matter.
of things I was going to bring up as you were talking about that. One, there have been actually efforts to have people talk about crime and people that have been victimized, that have been in the streets and everything. I don't know about Memphis, even though I do have a friend that lives there, and I can reach out to him and see what's going on in that area. But I know here in Durham, North Carolina, there is a group of African American leaders that actually got together on the steps of Hayti. I think that was either last year or the year before, because they saw that there was a rise in quote unquote black on black crime. So they wanted to have the chance to bring that awareness to people and to actually tell people to stop the madness, whatever that madness was, and to take to one of Lee's favorite points, point of responsibility, and all in that space. And there are gang issues that are here in Durham, as well as Rocky Mount and a number of other cities here in North Carolina. So they were working on dealing with that. And there have even been efforts to bring some of the gang folks into the police force. That was actually one of the initiatives that has actually gone on here in Durham, because if you can't beat them, sometimes you might have to have them join your force.
I'm sorry, Mark. Can you repeat what you just said? Bringing the gang folks into the police force. Maybe that's what's happening in Memphis.
There's been conversations around that, and has actually been done. There are some former gang members that are now members of the police force here in Durham. It's been done in other places as well. So definitely that, because sometimes they have a better understanding of the communities than the police do. Because I mean, there's this whole notion of community policing, and unfortunately, a lot of times people, for whatever reasons, are afraid to live in a certain community. So yes, there have been efforts to reach out into those organizations and see if there are folks that are interested in joining the force in one form or another. And I've actually reached out to some of those people that actually come onto the show, because I know that of at least I want to say 3 or 4 past gang members that are now members of the Durham police force and all of that. And they are
And Mark, did the national media cover that? Did the national media cover what you're talking about?
I don't think the local media did, and some of the state media. I don't think the local media did, but I don't know how much the national media has actually paid attention to even the nature of the police chief. Because actually, what a lot of people forget is that a lot of the conversation around police violence has been around white police officers attacking or assaulting various members of the African American community. But in this case, it was actually 5 black officers that were members of the Scorpion unit that attacked this gentleman, and that's actually been a conversation as well, because some people are wondering whether, because they were African American officers, were they rushed to judgment faster than other people that were not.
People are making this a racist incident, right?
Yeah, we'll figure out how to make it racist later. Sasha has a point.
I would add to that Russia actually went further. They're hiring criminals right from the jails, and not those convicted for petty crimes, but those who killed people and got 23 years in jail. So they're now bringing them to the front. So maybe that's something that U.S. police should look into. If that's what you're saying is correct.
Actually, there's a difference, though. I'm not condoning that, but there's a difference. They're taking the prisoners and they're putting them into an army against a different country.
Okay.
Over here, it's against our own citizens.
No, it's the next step. Yeah, I agree. It's not the same. It's a next step. And actually, the next step may be for U.S. police to hire Russian criminals to
Russian criminals to police our state. That would be really good. We'll bring the Russians in to stop crime. The Russian criminals in the United States to stop crime in the United States.
And then U.S. criminals bring to Russia to help them.
We're going to have a hold on a second. So we're going to have another version
Mark, you bring up an interesting point.
Program. We're going to do our own version of prison exchange, the new version of the prison exchange.
Mark, and what you brought up in terms of those gang members, is there an effort to reform them first before putting them on the police force?
Oh, that's totally what it is. It's totally a reform program. I mean, it's definitely.
So why can't they do that without putting them on the police force to reform these gang members?
I'm
Because
sorry.
they need jobs.
They already have the guns.
It's hard to be reformed if you don't have a job.
They've already got the guns.
I understand, Nick. So the jobs don't necessarily need to be in the police force. They just need jobs, period.
They already know what the drugs are.
One of the things that goes on, Lee, is definitely there is an effort to get them jobs, and there are definitely efforts to get jobs. One of the things that I've heard, and I've not ever been a member of a gang ever in my life, but I do know folks that have been in that space, including some that have been arrested.
Some of your best friends, right?
And everything is that if you think about it, and Lee, you might even know some people that are in that space, and some of the other people on this panel that may know people that are in that space. A lot of times, the skill sets that these folks have are very much usable in corporate America and in some of the other parts of America as well. It's a matter of talking them into the fact of understanding that the consequences may be less. You might not get killed as quickly if you're a member of a corporation, but some of those
Mark, some of our best CEOs are criminals.
Say what?
Some of our best CEOs are criminals.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
Most of our politicians are.
Yeah.
Some of our best
The point is
CEOs
that the skill sets are
competition,
actually
Mark.
skill sets that we can bring into other parts of the industry. But part of that is also convincing our youth that
Unlike Russia.
the quickest money is not always the best money. Because, like I said, there's the risk of getting shot and killed if you get into those gang environments. And there are a number of other risks that they face as well. And that's why some people like to go for the quote unquote easy money. It's also the same reason that a lot of people like to play the lottery, because they're looking for that quick, easy money. They don't want to work as hard as, say, Sasha or Nick has or other people have in order to earn the successes that they have had, because a lot of times people are looking for that quick and easy release and everything. So that's part of the problem, as well as how do you tell a 10 or 14-year-old that he's going to actually not make, that he's going to make $20,000, but working his way in corporate America, and then maybe working his way up to $100,000 when he can go into the drug trade and maybe make that in a day's work. I don't know if it's going to be quite a day's work.
Mark,
you get the idea.
In a lot of states, on the highways, they park cars there that are totally smashed and demolished to incentivize people to slow down.
Right.
Maybe they should show these people that the cemeteries of all these people in the gangs who didn't make it to 30.
No, and they should definitely do that. I mean, one of my, as many of y'all know, I am a big fan of blues music. It's part of the reason of what the email that y'all get and everything. And one of my favorite blues songs is actually just what you just said, because the line within the song is, "I haven't seen an armored car at a funeral yet." And that's one of the favorite lines from one of my favorite blues songs, which is basically implies that, that is the consequences of the death, and that you probably aren't going to see that big time money after you've passed. So like I said, that is one, and I don't remember the exact artist off the top of my head, but it is a line within a song.
It would be
Yeah, yeah.
interesting to see the figures. What is the life expectancy of the gang members? How long, like if average male lives, 69 or 79 years old to be the gang
No,
members?
it's a lot shorter. They have very
Okay.
short life expectancies, and they're hard to insure because of the problems that they have. Fact of, I did an analysis on gangs and that type of related business, and Sasha, it's a bad business plan. I mean, most of these people that are involved in that stuff really need to go to entrepreneurship school
Yeah.
and learn about trades that are actually profitable, like HVAC. I have a new client who's HVAC client. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning. That's a great business to be in. See, I don't think they're coached right in school what to go to, and the trades from plumbing to air conditioning to almost construction, everything is more
Absolutely.
profitable.
But
Then
but
what
it's taught
Well, that's
in
right.
university. It's still the best return on investment is business is robbing the banks. It's still
No,
uncomparable.
it's hard. That's a hard business. See, if
Hard,
you want to rob the banks, if you want to rob people, get a securities license. Okay,
yeah.
you need to do it legally. Come on,
Or a law
Sasha.
license, one of
You
the
It's
know,
tough.
And,
No, I'm
and
not
Nick,
saying
I mean,
it's an easy one.
Or maybe
only way to
become a
rob the
security
bank
guard. I'm
by
sure some
sitting
of them are
inside.
probably. I
You
mean, one
know,
of the ways you can do
don't
is
be on the
become a
outside
security
looking
guard,
in.
or maybe even become the banker, because I'm sure that some of the bankers are probably robbing the banks blind
They
and
are.
everything in that space.
Okay, hey. You guys laugh about it, but I've done studies on it. Do you know white collar crime is 100 times greater than crime on the street? In other words, more money is stolen internally, and something that we chase all the time, than it is on the streets. So the people that are really the bank robbers and the robber barons aren't the people that rob the bank from the outside. It's the people that embezzle the money from the inside.
Nick,
And,
Is
and,
it part?
and,
just,
and,
I just
Hold on a
read an
second.
Wait.
Hold on a
article.
second. Nick.
I forgot where. I just read an article that federal employees built all this COVID money loans from federal government in tens of millions of dollars, and
yeah,
a lot of this.
yeah, right. So the real problem
But
is the people that are
Nick, hold
robbing
on a
from the
second.
outside, and the people that are doing crime there really need to reposition themselves, get a new business plan together, and go inside, not outside. And like
But
we're having problems right now in our community.
Nick, hold on a
where
second. Aren't there
people
two problems
are
with
robbing cars. There's no money in cars. If you want to
Well,
make
that's
money in
that's the whole
cars,
smash and
they're the
grab, and yeah, apparently they're making a significant amount of money doing that smash and grab.
Nick, but they can't
Places
get
like
elected into
Detroit and
office. It's
other
not so
places like
easy.
that.
but
And it's easy money. But I got a
that
question for
business
you,
plan
Nick. You're
goes
the
sour.
Nick.
The
You're the
smash
attorney.
and
Dan's
grab
the
business
attorney
goes
here as
sour.
well. I don't think anybody else is an attorney. I don't think Lee's an attorney that I recall. But Nick, I do
I
have a
am.
Could
question
use
for
one.
you. Isn't part of the problem that it is most of those white collar criminals are actually getting away with it? I don't care what their skin tone is or everything. So isn't it easier to actually be a white collar criminal, because a lot of times those are the ones that are not being prosecuted? I would agree with your assessment that there's a lot of white collar crime out there, but is anybody in the court system going after the white collar criminals,
Hey,
except for when it is expedient to do? If they're
yeah,
and every blue moon they'll do it because it's expedient or because they're forced to. But I imagine that there is crimes being committed regularly in that
regularly,
lane
right.
that are never being prosecuted.
No, you're absolutely right, Mark. Okay, as it sits today, not that every time it hits my office there's one, but last couple weeks there was a $40,000 plus embezzlement that we weren't involved in, but I heard from somebody else, and it's going to be very difficult to chase and get that money back. Embezzlements are quite common. Like I said, the study goes that like this: $6 billion is taken out of the economy through smash and grab. 600 billion a year. 600 billion a year is embezzled out of the economy. through various things such as just pure wire fraud, bank fraud. Eventually, those people do get caught, Mark, but it takes a long time. The process is very slow. It's easier for policemen to arrest you for breaking into a car than you inside a bank making a wire transfer to yourself. That is harder for them to prosecute, oddly enough. But what I think our educational system is failing these students by not getting them prepared for jobs that make money. Okay, there's a lot of jobs out there that make money. There's a lot of entrepreneurial jobs that you can make really good money today in the United States, and they're ignoring them. And I'm going like, what a waste. And a lot of them are.
Are you condemning the educational system that they should teach more marketable skills?
Yes.
Well, Lee and Nick, I've got shocking news for both of you. There are actually jobs that are making some significant money. I'm sure that Sasha may be aware of this as well. I'm sure that Dan is as well. But I know some people that are basically what they amount to is technologists. They are very much knowledgeable about technology. They're knowledgeable about a lot of this stuff that is going on in the computer field and all of that. Now, whether you want to call it the metaverse, whether you want to call it virtual reality, whether you want to call it augmented reality, whatever titles you want to give it is up to you and everything. But I do know for a fact that some of these folks have do not have college degrees. Some of them are actually learning the skills very early in life in their high schools and everything of that nature, and even sometimes junior high. And even if we look at esports, and some of them are making some pretty sizable money, and they definitely need to learn about the financial end of it and learn some financial management. But there's some pretty good money that you don't necessarily need a college degree in and everything. I'm glad I've got my bachelor's in journalism, and I'm glad some friends of mine have masters and PhDs, but I know some folks that are making some pretty good money, including in some new technologies and some new fields, as well as some of the older ones that y'all mentioned, because there's some plumbers that are making a whole lot more money than some lawyers are and everything, but they are not necessarily lauded the way that some of our athletes and entertainers and definitely some of our corporate heads are, even though they are making some serious money and some serious bank to use that phrase.
And you also need to add financial education to that, Mark, because the fact is, if you're in any of the trades, you're going to make a lot of money in the United States. Your jobs aren't exportable. Like, unfortunately, tech jobs are exportable overseas. And people go, oh, I'll be a coding expert. Forget it. You're competing with 600 Indians who can code. I'm going to be a plumbing expert in the United States.
And some cowboys.
It's non-competitive. They have to hire you because the Indian guy can't take your job. I'm serious. I'm going to be a heating, ventilation, air conditioning.
Any nurses,
job, HVAC,
or healthcare professionals, or so on. It's all cannot be transferred overseas. It has to be done locally, exactly where the patient is.
What you're witnessing in this big crime stuff is a failure of our education system. Because Sasha hit it on the spot. If you go into nursing today, right, there's a big shortage of nurses, big shortage of physician assistants. If you don't want to be called a nurse, a physician assistant, big shortages that are not exportable overseas. Everybody says, oh, well, we got to go become a coder. No, you don't want to become a coder. You are going to compete with 600 million Indians, 600 million Chinese who are going to be better coders than you. Oh, I'm going to be a physician's assistant. Good idea. Because in the United States, you don't compete with anybody except people in the United States. So our education system is a failure with a big F in the United States. We're failing our students.
In Canada, shortage of nurses and all medical professionals just as acute as elsewhere. And so there was an experiment. They were trying to recruit the new immigrants to Canada to find some with some kind of medical background in their countries and enroll them into medical school here. So to make them exactly assistants and so on. You know how many people they found eligible? Only 100, and only 23 of those 100 were accepted actually.
Yeah, well, I mean, see, this is the big problem with our failure of our educational system. What you're seeing in this crime spree is basically based on the failure of the education system in the United States of America. Because if you took these students when they're younger and you start directing them into places where you can actually make a living, you're not going to be competitive when you graduate, from high school, middle school, even college, you're going to have a basis of something that you can always rely on. Then you've actually done a service to our students, and then you're going to also have to give them financial education, because frankly, Mark,
No,
these make a
no,
lot of
I hear what you're saying, but Nick and Lee and everybody else here, I guess the question I've got to ask you, and it's the question that's always asked to me as well, is how do you convince a 12, 13, or 14-year-old, especially when they're trying to be accepted? A lot of what goes on even in the gang community is that they don't have, and I know that Lee has brought this up before, a strong family connection. So they are looking for a sense of family. That is why a lot of people will join gangs and things of that nature. So if they've got a family, and whether that is a family of gangsters or a family of whatever, and they've got that support system, and then they're also going out there making 75 to 100, or who knows, maybe even in some cases millions of dollars and everything. How do you convince them that to go into computers, or to go into robotics or drones, or even to go into something to feel like what you're in, law, which might take about 15 years, and they're sitting there going like, I've already made your money in the blink of an eye and everything, and all I had to do was go cheat somebody out of it. And I'm not condoning that, but definitely, what is your thoughts when that's the argument that they're going to give you?
Well, that's the reason why you start when they're younger, and also you build in the corporate style pseudo infrastructure into your education system. In other words, we used to do what they call mock trials, and Dan's used to that stuff. In other words, what they did is they did simulations on what it is to be a trial lawyer. Here's what you do. We had what they call moot court. Here's how you do appellate arguments. You do the same thing in your educational system. Here's your corporation. Because basically, if you look at the drug lords, or whoever these people are making a lot of money doing, they're running corporations, really. So what you do is you take that simulation into your school system so that they can see, this is your president, vice president, these are your officers. Here's what you're going to do. Your trade is going to be HVAC. I'm going to use HVAC because people in heating, ventilation, air conditioning in the United States make a lot of money, and the jobs are not transportable. And I'm saying, Mark, they make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but you just don't hear about it because the people that are in the industry, they don't want to tell you that, hey, look, I'm a heating specialist, but you don't know. So I make good six figures.
No, they make six figures. There's no doubt about that. But then the counter,
and get them away from the fact that you're going to be on the streets trying to pan pills. I mean,
I got that, but I guess the other part of that I was getting to get, and I'd love to hear Dan's thoughts around this, and anybody else's thoughts that's in the legal field, you as well, Nick, and definitely Sasha. The other part that they will give you is that there's a lot of outside influences that goes into the drug trade as well. One of the common things that I hear people say is that whether you're talking about the ghettos of Detroit or the ghettos of New York, and I don't care what kind of ghettos they are or who's in those ghettos and those poor areas, that the people that are in there don't necessarily own the means to get the drugs into there and everything in that space. And one of the famous quotes that I've heard is, I've yet to see a plane or a helicopter in those communities as well, which means that there are either government influences or foreign influences that are providing the drugs into those areas. So when you're telling the young kids not to get involved, how are you going to tell them that when they are being, if I can just be blunt about it, subsidized by either foreign forces or sometimes our own government forces?
Yeah, well, the thing is, there is parts of the drug industry that are very profitable. It's called the pharmaceutical industry. Okay, and there's
not just the pharmaceutical industry, but even
Mark,
illegal drugs.
When you were in elementary school and middle school, did you take Pharmacology 101? Did they offer it?
No.
Did they talk about
No.
No, they didn't. And see, this is a failure of our education system. They could actually teach that in elementary school. Okay, and Sasha and I know this. In other words, you could teach basic pharmacology, because that's really what they are. Drugs are either legal or illegal, but that's a legal aspect. But frankly, pharmacology can be taught at elementary school level. But our education system doesn't even teach the basics of pharmacology. And there's a lot of money there. Don't get me wrong. There's money in because I have another client, and you know what he makes a lot of money on? He makes millions a year. He sells these things. They're called vitamins. Okay. And the thing is that's basically, but does anybody learn about the vitamin industry in the United States in elementary school? When do we teach that? We don't. Back to the failure of our education.
Nick, It's a failure
It just-
education in schools, but that doesn't absolve the homes from teaching it and modeling the behavior that we want for these kids.
Yeah, well, no, I understand that you're going to be fighting a culture, but at the same a certain culture. But there's certain parents that wouldn't mind seeing their kids learn about basic pharmacology and be able to distinguish between good drugs, bad drugs, legal.
I understand
drugs,
that it's called
drugs,
homeschooling sometimes,
vitamins.
necessary instead of public education, but in addition to public education.
Well, I mean, this is a failure of our public education system. Of our public
Granted,
education
fine.
system, we can't do it.
Fine, if the schools
That's the
can't
reason we
provide it,
have
the
charter
parents should.
But they won't. They won't do it. But here's part of the reason they won't do it. Lee, we figured this out after the CHUS thing years ago. The teachers aren't trained themselves in pharmacology because they're not trained. They don't want to teach it. They want to teach
Fine.
English,
But the
math,
parents,
algebra, whatever.
before your first child, Nick, before your first child, you don't know how to change a baby. A diaper, the bottling, and all that. You learn. You have children, you learn. What do these kids need? You want your kids to learn chess? You teach them chess. You learn yourself.
Right. And
But
the thing
Nick-
is, what we
but
discovered
Nick
in the
has-
chess world is elementary school kids can learn to play chess. There was a myth that said, oh, they can't learn. They're too stupid. They're not. They're smart and they all learned how to play. It's the biggest place where outside vendors come in to teach chess to students. You probably need, because our teachers are incompetent, you need probably outside vendors to come and teach finance, teach pharmacology, teach these types of subjects, and then you'll transform the United States of America.
But Nick, how,
One second,
Nick, hold on a second. Nick, how does that work
Imagine
though?
they still do. One second, Mark.
Nick, how does that
the
work
thing-
though? Because
You
there
gotta
have been
grab
many.
them while they're young, Lee. Grab
No,
them
I
while
understand.
they're young.
In my day, we had a thing called field trips. We would go to different factories, and pharmaceutical companies should be fair game for this.
Yeah, of course.
They should
and
be,
they
but
would
Lee and Nick,
if
there
there
has
was
been
more of a
efforts to
private
actually get
partnership
people
with the
into
public schools.
the
but public
education
schools are
system
going to fight it because
that
they
are
don't
business
know.
leaders. And I don't know that those programs are actually being supported. I don't know that the school systems are doing a good enough job of that as well. Because I mean, you can even look at it right here where we are in the RTP area, Research Triangle Park area, for those that are watching it internationally. And there should be tons, if not hundreds, and if not thousands of folks that should be able to go into the school systems that can talk about everything from a job in pharmaceuticals to a job in a number of other things. But I don't know, one, that the school systems or the corporations are encouraging enough of that to happen and everything.
Mark, you know who should go into the school systems?
After school, and I've got a friend of mine that is a Cisco engineer. He actually runs a program called Asymmetry, but he's doing that on his own time after he's working for Cisco. So he actually does that after hours on the weekend and on days, but he's got a number of kids that he is teaching about robotics and drones. But I don't know that Cisco is sending him out. He's formed his own company to do it on, as a, for lack of a better term, a side hustle.
Mark, you know who should go to the school systems? These reformed gang members who turn their lives around and tell
there
the
are quite
kids
a few
this
of
is
those
not
that
the
do
way to
that.
go,
Like,
and this is how I did it.
Yeah.
And there are
Yeah,
quite a few that do that.
but
Mike
the
Anderson
thing
is
is
an
you have-
example,
you have to-
and
if you're
Desiree
gonna
Dixon, a number of
change-
others.
If you're going to change the United States of America for the positive, you got to start with the youth. You can't
100%.
wait till they're you can't wait till they're 30 and say, "Hey, look, now we're going to rehabilitate." You want to start changing this whole culture and conversation when they're young. And the thing is, get them while they're young. And we know that.
Young and before they get in trouble.
But yeah, way before they get in trouble. And you got to bring it down to the elementary school level, because elementary school is where they form their ideas, their opinions. They can learn a lot if you would deliver the right message to them and you have a school and educational system that does it. Unfortunately, we don't have that delivery system. It's like a 6-year babysitting course, and then all of a sudden they turn loose and you get all these problems that we're seeing right now. But you got to get them while they're young. Like I say, if you want to change the world, change the youth, and then you'll
No, I
change.
understand. I think the private schools possibly are doing it, and the parochial schools are doing even a better job than the public
Yeah, right.
schools.
Well, yeah,
And charter schools are doing a fantastic job.
Yeah,
in some
and
cases.
so the thing is, we if you want to nip this problem in the bud, you got to get to it early. So
Well,
Memphis
public
is too late. They're sending the Scorpion around unit to destroy a problem when they realize the problem actually started.
But
way
speaking
back
of
when.
speaking of the Scorpion Union, I got to get back to that because that actually
Yeah, I
has
thought you
a
said the Scorpion.
that actually has a Durham connection, and it's actually interesting. I had a conversation Saturday with some of the people that are familiar with Durham and Durham's politics and everything. But what folks forget is that the police chief is actually a new police chief there in Memphis, or a relatively new police chief. CJ, I believe is her name. And ironically, she was the police chief before she came to Memphis of the Bull City. So yeah, she was the police chief in Durham. So when I was talking to people, they were like, she was not exactly on our favorite person list either, because they were seeing guns and other things that she was trying to stamp out and not necessarily doing a good job of, which is part of the reason that there are quite a few folks that were glad that she took the job in Memphis, because they weren't feeling that she was doing a efficient job here in Durham. But I've definitely reached out to some of our city council people, as well as some of the other folks that were involved in Durham policing. So hopefully we'll get a view from their dealings with her in the next few days, because I've definitely reached out to some people that knew her when she was here, and she actually just left here maybe a year or two ago, because I think she was hired right before the pandemic and she left during the pandemic. So she did not have a long tenure here in Durham, but she was the police chief in Durham before she was the police chief in Memphis, where she's now dealing with this firestorm.
Oh, really? Really? So the thing is, the police chief in Durham went to become the police chief in Memphis. Now they get to deal with the firestorm.
Exactly.
That's wonderful. Hey, speaking of firestorm, we have another firestorm out, and I know tomorrow we're going to be going over it. It's that crazy war in Ukraine. Okay, and I know that Sasha's been covering that every week. But the thing is, you know, when you look at the priorities, okay, that exist in the United States. Okay, the Memphis thing is one thing, but this thing could blow up the whole bloody world. And we tend to treat it like, okay, you know, there's problems in Ukraine. But what's going on? It sounds to me, Sasha, that we're going to be sending tanks over, possibly aircraft over, and this thing looks like it's going to get a little hotter under the table in Ukraine. What are we looking at? I mean, are we looking at escalating? What's going on here?
Nick, you know, there are several levels at which Ukrainian war can be discussed. It's a history, it's a frontline situation, it's a politics, it's a economy as well. Now, the major thing is, would you allow one country, even if it's Russia, to completely derail all the world orders, which is established since 1945? So for 80 years, there were the certain rules and certain models established, and Russia single-handedly ruins it all. Okay, so the answer could be either yes or no. So let's look at the answer yes, you allow that to happen. So that's a signal that any country could attack any other country, whether it's a neighbor or sometimes even not a neighbor, and be absolutely unpunished, because if Russia is unpunished for its actions, although even you know what, those truths, even if US will not send the further planes or tanks or something like that, Ukraine is so well armed today that it can fight the war with Russia just the way. It just will take much longer. And it seems to me that West and United States made a decision to end this war ASAP, really. I mean, to keep this war dragging. And never mind that as a result, thousands and thousands more Ukrainians will be killed. Okay, so who cares about this? All those Ukrainians, but even for the world economy, for the world politics, this war is really absolutely undesirable. So if that's the case, just finish it.
Sasha, not for everybody. There's a lot of people in the military complex that are making tons of money off of this, selling weapons.
Yeah, right. But my question is, why isn't Congress having hearings on this? In other words, war crimes in Russia and their supporters. Lee, we're not having any hearings on that. It's like, this isn't important. Yet January 6th is. Okay, January 6th is.
Where's the UN?
It's really important.
And
where's the UN? Did they get a pass on this, on the war crimes or whatever you're talking about? They're just silent.
Well, the UN is silent, but the United States, if we had any person in Congress that had any chutzpah whatsoever, and apparently none of them did.
That's a good word.
It's a good word, because they don't.
We like chutzpah. Good word.
I got another word
right now on the war crimes in Russia.
Really, you know, the problem is
instead they want to go after, and the Democrats are at fault. Sorry, They wanted to go after the January 6th. Now they want to go after classified documents. All those are important, but not as important. And this is the problem.
Is it just Nick? Is it just the Democrats? Because everybody seems to be going after everybody these days. Because, like I said, I've seen Pence's name thrown out there. I've seen everybody. Because apparently, everybody has documents in their house. I'm tempted to look around in my house and see if I've got some documents. I'm not even in politics because apparently everybody's got documents and all.
I want to show Sasha something. I found a document in my house, like no kidding. You wouldn't believe it. Look at that, Sasha.
Yeah,
who wrote this
good
book?
For you. Good for you.
Okay, my brother actually gave it to me when I was in Florida.
So you have a document. It could be a qualified document.
How come Marin's on the show all the time and never told anybody he's a famous author of the Perk Defense? He's on the chess show every week.
Nick, because he was already paid for this book by the publisher, so he doesn't care anymore. He keeps writing new books.
He doesn't need the promotion anymore.
Hold on a second. Sasha, we have a guest on the show today. You want to say good morning?
Guy doesn't talk about it.
Say what?
We have a guest on the show. Should we all say good morning?
Yeah, good morning. There he is. Say hello.
Good morning. There's Kim. Kim is there.
Morning, Kim.
Good morning. But I do have a quick question for Sasha, and Kim may want to get on the question as well. But one of the things I'm hearing a lot of people talk about is apparently as we're getting further into the war will celebrate a year anniversary on next month, February, which is only a day or two away and everything. And some people are saying that there is a lot of conversation that maybe the Russian forces are looking at targeting some of the Western cities. I've even heard that London may be on the target list and everything. And that's stuff that I've read. So I was wondering, is this something that the West needs to be concerned about? Because as I was reading stuff during the news, they were saying that London and maybe even Berlin might be on the target list.
They've always been on the list.
Yeah, and they're chasing classified documents like they're important. Yes, they're important, but not as important as a nuclear bomb dropping on your bloody city. That is important. See, this is the problem in Washington, D.C. They don't have any brains. They can't prioritize what's important and what isn't. Let me tell you something. Dropping a nuclear bomb on Toronto, Salt Lake City, Durham, North Carolina, Raleigh, wherever city you live in, that is important. Whether somebody takes a classified document or not out of their house, it's important, but not as important. Defaulting on our national debt.
Yeah, we're also targeting them. You got to remember that.
Nick, I think you have a point.
I don't get why they can't prioritize
Nick, you have a point. Now, I'm reading a lot of commentaries regarding Ukraine and some Russian commentaries, including. So now Russians are saying very interesting things, that to drop the nuclear bomb on Ukraine, it's now too late. It should have been done much before, some 6 months ago, maybe even 9 months ago. Now it's too late. There will be no result. So now what does make a lot of sense, it's to actually send nuclear bombs to London, to Washington, and a few more cities. That makes a lot of more sense because the results will be obvious, and they will get a lot of bang for their money.
A lot of bang for the buck.
No pun intended.
Is that right? Okay, but I'm just saying, Sasha, to me, that I prioritize that to be an important thing. When I was down in Tampa last week, they have MacDill Air Force Base, and I grew up when Cuba missile crisis, and we almost went to nuclear war, and we were told duck and cover when that nuclear bomb comes.
We even had
now after studying nuclear war, jumping underneath my desk ain't going to save my rear. It ain't going to happen. Okay,
kiss it goodbye.
You can kiss it goodbye. This is actually.
But speaking of Nick,
important issue.
But Nick, speaking of duck and cover, do any of our kids even, because looping it back to the two conversations together, do any of our kids even know what to do if something was to happen in a nuclear attack of any sort? Because I don't know if any kids know what to do. At least, I mean, even if it was impractical, we did learn duck and cover. I mean, it was very impractical because you would be a fried.
Mark, Kimberly can tell you.
But,
That's about it.
The nuns taught me. You know. That's right. In any situation, you have no other choice. Pray. You know, as I always say, hope is not a strategy, right? So, so what you need to do is put together a plan. If the plan doesn't work, your Hail Mary is a wish, but or a prayer. So at the end of the day, there, if something hit us here in North Carolina, I worked for CPNL, which head up the nuclear power plant here. It will blow up more than 30 to 60 miles of big hole in our vicinity all the way around. I kind of gave up going, what does it matter, right? I live within, as the crow flies, that parameter. So there's nothing you can do. Okay.
Yeah.
But what we can do is stay ahead of the ball. What we can do is reach out to these people and say, grow up and grow a set of cojones and stop acting like children and act like humans. Stop having wars. Stop being males and having wars. Okay. Learn to get along with people. Play chess. Play a game of chess and go, okay, the loser, you go home for a while, or set a world parameter. But people need to quit. Men need to quit having wars.
Well,
but women have wars too. But Kim speaks that there have been women involved in wars as well. So let's be fair. There have been, like, Cleopatra was involved in some wars. Helena was involved in some wars.
And you can't blame Hillary because she didn't start.
No, I didn't say Hillary. I said Helena.
Helena of Troy. She didn't start them.
No, she just kills people.
No. One woman out of a billion guys that start wars.
Oh, come on.
There have been many, but I did have a question based on, and this is for everybody, and then we're going to get to at least one quick sports conversation. But the question I had is about the economy, because one of the things is I was at a store and the person was complaining because they just bought some eggs, and I think the eggs were like $6. They're thinking that the chicken actually needs to be working for them because that's how much the eggs were costing. And then somebody else went to Dollar Talk, they were like, the eggs were $10 and everything. So I'm wondering, are we concerned, just like we're concerned about the war, about these rising prices? Because apparently like a pack of eggs that you used to be able to get for 50 cents. I mean, I know I'm dating myself, but they are like getting ridiculously priced, and that's what people were complaining about when I was out and about on yesterday and Sunday. So when I was out and around, they were like, good grief, $10 eggs? This is ridiculous. So what is our thoughts around this? And are we going to see $20 eggs before the end of the year?
Okay.
Mark, didn't they tell us inflation's just transitory? It's just going to come right back down?
Yeah. Well,
nothing to worry about.
Actually, somebody gave me a book, How Not to Die, Mark. And one way to do it is you need to eat more grains and you need to eat more plants. Eggs are not on that list. You don't eat eggs. So you got to actually switch your what's happening is you need to switch your diet to be more plant-based and get away from eating the bloody eggs.
See, that's what they want you
to do. Then you don't have to worry about the egg prices. Real simple.
That's what they want you to do.
But Nick, in all fairness, cows eat grass. Look what they look like.
That's
methane.
That's true, but you're not supposed to eat the cow. You can eat the grass.
Okay. That's what OAC says, right? See, the methane in South Dakota, right?
Yeah. But anyway, what you got to do is get away. They even did a study on this. Apparently, when you have an Egg McMuffin, I didn't know that because I love Egg McMuffins, right? Let me tell you something. The study was your blood pressure goes up within like hours, and your cholesterol zooms to the sky. You basically are killing yourself eating an Egg McMuffin. I had no idea, but apparently that's the reality of the Egg McMuffin.
You think fast food's not healthy? I thought fast food was the healthiest food around.
Switch to oatmeal.
Nick, would it be fair to say that Egg McMuffin kills more people than nuclear arms?
It's possibly true today. The study goes like this, and we don't discuss this at all. 400,000 people a year will die of heart-related diseases. Mm-hmm. Okay? And we just shove that under the table like, let's go look at the murder in, what do they call it, Memphis, right? That was one person.
Well, most of them were kind of
400,000 people will die of heart disease this year. And we ignore it.
Well, more now.
Nick, it's not that we ignore it. We incentivize it. There's a big difference with what we feed, the diets, lack of exercise. When COVID hit, what they tell people, don't go to the gyms, don't get sun, and don't worry about your weight because that's irrelevant if you're obese.
Yeah, I mean, it's very relevant. And
it's extremely relevant.
It's basically shoved underneath the table. I mean, the thing is, it's the leading cause of death of men and women. 400,000 people this year. It's not 1,000. It's not 40.
It's a-
Well, Nick, I don't think you can just shove them to the table because I don't think it fit.
Okay, and the media should be bringing that up every day instead of that one person who died in Memphis.
Why aren't the pharmaceutical companies doing that?
Granted, that was horrible, but
No,
during
it's
the
all the
same
men's
day,
fault,
what's
all right?
400,000 people?
Right,
Why
Kimberly?
are we teaching preventive medicine as opposed to giving pills?
Yeah,
Nick,
well,
Nick,
You want to
You
teach
see-
preventive medicine?
I think you're
Yeah.
missing the point. The death of one man is a tragedy. Now, the death of 400,000 men is nothing but statistics. So you cannot compare tragedy and statistics. It's not the
okay,
same.
Sasha, let's put it in perspective, right? One person died in Memphis because somebody killed him, whatever.
Right.
Today, 1,095, because I ran it up, 1,095 people will die today of heart-related diseases. Okay,
It's statistics.
1,000 today.
It's
And
statistics.
we're just going to ignore it. Let's,
It's
How
not-
many people,
let's not
and
cover
Nick,
that.
Nick and
Nothing but-
Sasha, how
Not
many people are going to die of
interesting.
starvation? And do we even cover that as a story?
Oh no, we
around the
don't.
world.
We don't cover starvation because that's not interesting either. You know. Oh, and by the way, Mark, do we know how many people in the United States died of starvation this year? Okay, that's a good question.
And Nick, but we do know how many people die from car accidents. We're not paying any cars.
Yeah, right. You know. But why aren't people
It's
marching on the
acceptable.
streets on heart disease? Why aren't people outraged
No,
about?
people
heart
have
disease?
whole efforts around heart disease and around multiple sclerosis and a number of other things. So I can't say that we don't address
I'm
it,
gonna go
but
out
you
and
are
protest
right
right now.
about
I'm
the
taking
coverage
my
and everything.
sign
Because
out.
every
Protest right now.
town in America, and I would argue every town around the world, has at least some sense of a homeless population. But a lot of times we'll drive by them or ignore them or not pay any attention. You can't name me maybe a small town, but even the small towns have probably homeless encampments. I know there are homeless encampments in Durham, which is a relatively small city, and there are definitely homeless encampments in New York, Miami, and a number of other places. But other than ignoring these folks and not giving them enough care, what are we doing? I mean, I did hear of an innovative person that had an innovative idea, and I was thinking that idea is going to be launched later on this year because they realized that some of those folks needed their laundry done. So they're actually going to use the food
Mark?
truck model and put it in a mobile laundromat. So they're going to do that
Mark,
here.
a serious
Right.
question. Why is the average homeless person homeless?
Why? I mean, it varies. I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with mental things that are going, like mental things that are happening in their life. When you talk to a lot of them, there is some sort of thing that is happening in their space around mental health and mental illness and things of that nature. And there's also a lot of people that have been kicked aside and abandoned for whatever reason. Sometimes it's related
From their families.
Sometimes it is family abandonment. But I would say that those are the and I don't have these statistics in front of me, but I would say that those are probably the number 1 and 2 reasons is something that is happening within the family structure and or something that is dealing with mental health. And in some cases, both of those.
Is there a percentage that want to be homeless?
I mean, there are some people that have done what they call going off the grid, and there are definitely people that like to go off the grid, and some of those may be doing it intentionally. So yes, there's probably a percentage because oftentimes you will hear people talking about wanting to go off the grid, which means that you're not being tracked by the government and tracked by a number of other sources that are out there. Some of those people go homeless. Some of those people also go into like module homes and things that are not going to have them seen as much. I mean, I knew,
But that's not necessarily unhealthy for them, though.
I mean, in some cases, it might be very healthy. I knew one person that
Right.
literally, I don't know if they're still around because they actually worked for one of the companies that I worked for, but for a minute there, they were literally living out of their car and seemed to be doing a successful job of it and everything.
If any of you have a chance, and I'll send you a link, Robin Williams was a big, passionate person
Mhm.
for homeless
Mhm.
and addiction reforms. And he
Yes, he
actually
was.
went and spoke to the Senate, and it was probably one of the most impactful speeches I've ever seen. And I believe that if they really took Robin Williams serious and if they had done their job, Robin would probably still be alive today. But they don't. Our government, their reform, they can talk all they want. But even back then, they were, not to die, but How Not to Die. That's a good
New York
book.
Times bestseller. Add it to my book.
But what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter how many people want to be homeless. The vast majority of them, especially today, and it will be growing because of our economic situation, don't want to be. They want to be, the majority of the people in the world want to be sustainable, healthy, and they want their communities to be healthy. They just want to go to work every day, go home and have a little comfort. That's the vast majority of the people.
Are there hearings going on in Congress right now about homelessness and solutions?
Probably not.
That's right. What they were doing is they're praising the University of Georgia Law School. What a bloody
Well,
waste.
that's something
waste.
Robin
That's a
Williams
mistake.
addressed.
Who cares
You're more
about the University of
interested
Georgia?
in, like back then,
waste.
HUD got money to build homes, and instead they built golf courses. So
They do. They build golf courses. There we go.
yeah, so instead of building more
Golf is
homes, they were
important.
building. And Robin was, the typical comedian. That's how he communicated, and possibly that was probably part of his mental problem. That's why he came across so naturally good, was because of the way he conveyed things. But what Whoopi Goldberg was with him. So if you get a chance, I'll send a link to everyone. It's
Please.
phenomenal, and share it and spread it, and let's make this go viral again, because, if we want to make the changes, we have to push that button. The government won't do it unless you go to them and you show them how it lines their pocket and benefits them. They will never do anything that is for the human, ever. Okay. As a whole, that government is not there to help the humans and make them better and provide better solutions. Even back then, Robin brought up the huge expense of our medical insurance. He didn't bring up medical care being expensive. He said medical insurance is a joke. Okay. And it was then, and it is worse now. I would hate to see what he would say today. And and what he says is in a very comedy way, but jesters were put into place, and jesters were used to put government in their place many years ago. But they didn't take him serious. They didn't take Whoopi Goldberg serious, and they didn't take anyone else.
I can understand that.
But they didn't take anyone serious that came and spoke to them. But the thing is the problem exists. It existed then, and it exists today even worse.
Kimberly,
Whether one person wants to be homeless or not, but mental health care, and I sit on the board at UNC Chapel Hill for mental health care research, and we're doing fundraisers, and it's a very serious problem. And there are some people who want to help, but not enough. But as Robin said, we can either wait and address the problem when it's bigger, and it will be generation reform or generation deform, or we can do something now and start preventing it.
No, it's a very serious issue. I know
that is probably one of the most impactful speeches I've ever heard in my life. Everything he did, if you really take a look at it, was designed for him to be able to convey these messages. I started doing a little bit more research on him when I got into this role, because we need people with his capability to convey things in a more humorous manner, because people won't listen otherwise.
But Kim, unfortunately, a lot of times we don't listen to the jesters, and the jesters oftentimes are the ones giving us a lot of wisdom. And no matter what people may think of their politics, whether it's Robin Williams, whether it's Bernie Mac, whether it's Richard Pryor, whether it's George Carlin, there have been a number of people that have definitely raised the issue from the comedian standpoint and things of that nature. But sometimes people treat them, unfortunately, as if they are just the jesters in the king's court, even though they are sometimes bringing up important issues. And I know we've got to get ready to bounce. I'm going to just leave on that thought. I did want to give a shout out, because I did watch the games yesterday. One of them was a thriller, the other one not as much. But heading to the Super Bowl, we're going to have both Kansas City Chiefs against the Philadelphia Eagles, and it should be a great game. The Super Bowl.
Mark, before we go, since you brought up football, I just want to mention, for those who want, there is a link, another video that came out, a clip that got dropped. Damar Hamlin came out with a speech that's extremely worthwhile and inspirational. One really needs to hear it.
Yep, and I definitely want people to hear that, and maybe we'll bring that up tomorrow. And I definitely know he's went through a lot, but I do I did enjoy the games. It looks like Dan enjoyed them as well. Like I said, one was not that much of a contest, the Philly San Francisco game, but the Kansas City game that they were playing definitely had you on the edge of your seats and everything, because I didn't know whether we were going to go to overtime, but we didn't with that last minute field goal. So it was a fun game, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about that on tomorrow or on some of the shows later on today. But I definitely expect an exciting Super Bowl because it's the two number ones, which doesn't oftentimes happen. So right now we're going to get out of here, and I know we've got.
Wait a minute, Mark. How can they be two number ones?
Well, they're number ones on both conferences.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a goalpost kind of, you know.
exactly. All right. So let's get on out of here. They've got Economic
Well,
Monday
tomorrow.
coming up and the media show later on.
Bye.
Bye.